Hello and welcome to Lecture 3 on Social Psychology. So now we're going to talk about the Stanford Prison Experiment. And I'm sure some of you are very familiar with this experiment. In 1971, this was considered a classic social psychology experiment. Dr. Zimbardo and Haney showed how quickly apparently normal students could be transformed into the social roles they were playing. And so Zimbardo and his research team created a mock prison in the basement of Stanford's psychology building. They selected 24 normal male students, all college age. In fact, all were college students from the Stanford area. And what do I mean by normal? I mean that they, everyone was tested and they showed no psychological or physical illnesses, and no one was using any drug, although I think the use of cannabis was allowed. And students were either assigned to be prison guards or prisoners. Zimbardo wanted to see, was doing research on prison, what he wanted to understand the prison experience better. Why is it that we see guards can sometimes become really abusive and prisoners kind of become dehumanized? And what does that do to prisoners? So he was looking at that issue. Now, there were no psychological differences between those chosen to be guards or prisoners. In 1971, $15 a day was pretty damn good. So each subject was paid $15 per day, and the study was supposed to go for 2 weeks, but it was ended on the 6th day. So I'd like you to go watch the video titled The Stanford Prison Experiment. It's in the folder on Moodle titled Chapter 12, Social Psychology Lecture Videos. Welcome back. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Stanford Prison Experiment, it's pretty shocking. It's quite intense. It's also a lie. And I think that this is really, really important to talk about. The Stanford Prison Experiment is one of the most popular, many consider it one of the most influential social psychology experiments that there is. And in 2017 or 2018, some reporters were doing some digging about it and discovered some really shocking inconsistencies. Zimbardo and his team had uploaded all of the data they had onto their website. So tons of interviews, tons of recordings, just all kinds of stuff. And some reporters just went through it with a fine-tooth comb and found some pretty shocking things that didn't line up with what was in the study itself, the write-up of the study, and the things that Zimbardo has said about the study over 50 years. And in 2024, book that was written earlier in French was translated into English about the Stanford Prison Experiment and how it's a lie. So, as we looked at as you were watching the video, Zimbardo wanted you to think that this was an organic experience. That, within a matter of 2 days, the guards became quite brutal. He wants you to think that they did that on their own. They did not. They were trained. And, when you first hear that, you're like, Well, of course, they had to be somewhat trained to be in the experiment. Fair. But Zimbardo was never upfront about what they trained the guards to do. The guards were trained to get a particular outcome from the prisoners. The guards actually believed they were research assistants, not that they were subjects. It wasn't until the end of the study that they were explicitly told that they were also subjects. So they thought they were research assistants. They did as they were told, and they thought they had to do that. So they were told that they had to kind of break the spirits of these prisoners. And Zimbardo has been very reluctant to admit that. On Moodle, you'll find a whole bunch of stuff about the Stanford Prison Experiment. And one of the sources is Zimbardo's response to the criticisms that have been raised. I'll talk about that in a minute. Zimbardo issued orders to the guards throughout the experiment. That isn't what happens in an organic experience. An organic experience doesn't require orders. Zimbardo said the guards just evolved this way. They just evolved to become fairly brutal. And that's not true. They were told to change their behavior throughout the study. Zimbardo was also highly biased going into the study and admitted to shaping the study for a particular outcome. The outcome was pre-established. It was not organic. Zimbardo was very fascinated in the prison industrial complex and some of the brutality that was happening in prisons. And these are certainly issues that are worthy of research. It's not research when you go in with a pre-established outcome. Zimbardo, until the day he died, just was adamant that even had he not coached the guards, what happened would have happened anyway. No, that's not how research works. That's not how science works. That's cheating. That's lying. The data collection had a high rate of subjectivity. Back in 71, it was a lot more complicated to do, constant videotaping. And so they didn't videotape everything. And once they were collecting correlating all the data, they realized they only videotaped the really intense incidents. They didn't videotape the more mundane parts of the experiment. And that is a high rate of subjectivity right there. And the ethical violations were extreme. Oh my God, they were extreme. And you can read a lot more about that on Moodle. But they got so bad that one prisoner was released when his mother threatened to bring a lawyer into the situation. On day 6, the prison chaplain was talking to another mother. The mother had come for a visitation, was pretty shocked by what she was seeing. And the chaplain recommended speaking to a lawyer. And she brought the lawyer in. I think this was Thursday. The chaplain talked to her on Thursday. And then on Friday, that lawyer came in and spoke to every prisoner that remained at the Stanford prison. Zimbardo broke so many ethical guidelines. The subjects were told they could leave if they wanted to. He Zimbardo didn't follow through with that. Yes, subjects were allowed to leave eventually. Usually they were denied. Zimbardo's explanation for that is lame. He said, well, they didn't say it, they didn't ask to leave exactly how they were supposed to ask. In other words, they didn't quote the phrase properly. That's not science. That is unethical. That's an abuse of your subjects. Every subject has the right to leave your experiment. For any reason, no questions asked. When subjects did ask to leave, he would offer to let them go if they would refund all of the money that they earned from being part of the study. That's not ethical. That's wrong. That's not science. That's abuse. So, for these reasons and many more, and again, there is a lot about this on Moodle if you're interested, we have to retract and, frankly, disregard the Stanford prison experiment. We must reject it. The Stanford prison experiment was theater in the guise of science, but what it really was theater for socio-political reasons. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I want to say this. I share Zimbardo's personal opinions about the prison industrial complex. I've actually done quite a lot of research about it. Our prison system is our main mental health facility in the United States. I think over 40% of inmates are struggling with mental illness. But science is science, and that process must be respected and it must be protected. The abuses of the prison industrial complex do not need to become theater. Zimbardo's a narcissist. He went to the media with this study before it even ended. The study started on a Sunday. He started talking to the media about this study on Monday in the middle of the experiment, because he's a narcissist. He didn't trust science. He didn't respect the science. And he sure didn't protect science. He could have made his personal opinions known. He always had a very large following as far as, people listened to him. He was a expert witness in a lot of trials because of this study, which raises some very serious legal issues for multiple trials, including one involved the Abu Ghraib prison. And yeah, I encourage you to read more about this. We need to take this out of the psychology curriculum, frankly, because it's a lie. It's theater in the guise of science, but it's actually socio-political. It's not science. And so, because our textbook still talks about this, I teach it because it's, part of the required curriculum, but I also want you to know the truth about the Stanford prison experiment. So, these are two of my main sources for talking about the ethical and scientific flaws with the Stanford prison experiment. I'm posting these on Moodle. I haven't posted these two sources quite yet, but there's a bunch of others posted on Moodle as well. So thank you.